The Beast voice was down here, beauty. Hello, I'm Tom Ellis, and these are my film firsts with BAFTA. The first film I ever remember seeing was at my granddad's house. He had a VHS tape with lots of Disney films on, and he introduced me to Snow White, the first ever Disney animation. So yeah, that was my first ever film. First one for Disney, first one for me. I remember the witch being particularly creepy. I remember not wanting to eat an apple afterwards. And I remember the dwarfs being incredibly funny, especially Dopey. Big up Dopey. It also had Jungle Book, the Aristocats, and the Robin Hood with the foxes as well. It was all on one tape. It was a great tape. The first character I was obsessed with is probably, not to be cliched, but it's probably James Bond. My dad was a huge James Bond fan. He introduced me to, well, we started with Dr. No, all the Sean Connery movies. I think Goldfinger was my favourite because it had the best gadgets in the car. And I was quite into Honor Blackman in a weird sort of way at the age of 7. Without doubt, my favourite Bond is Sean Connery. I think he is the OG. Yeah, he is Bond for me, for sure. Favourite scene from James Bond? It's probably the sequence in Goldfinger where they go over Fort Knox and they spray them with nerve gas and all that. For some reason, I was fascinated by that sequence. First film I saw at a young age that I definitely should never have seen was Nightmare on Elm Street. I remember a friend of mine, we were about 8 years old, I think, and he had cable, we didn't, and he'd recorded it, and he said, "You've got to come over and watch it." So I did, and it was absolutely terrifying. And then that night I had a nightmare about it, and I thought I heard this ungodly kind of screaming, and I woke up and I thought Freddy was in my room, and I looked at the window, and there was condensation on the window that was forming a kind of ghostly figure, and this noise was happening, and I was like, oh, and I ran into my parents' room going, oh, I'm scared, I've watched something I shouldn't have seen. Turned out the next day that the noise I could hear was actually foxes having sex, which I'd never heard before either, but equally scary. Anyway, there you go. A Nightmare on Elm Street. I think I've watched maybe 2 of them. There's certainly one of them where Freddy pulls his head open and you can see his brains inside. I think that's number 2. But yeah, I sort of steered clear pretty much for the rest of my life. The first film or TV show I was utterly obsessed with would probably be Blackadder, actually. I remember being about 7 or 8, and Blackadder was what friends of mine at school would be talking about, and we'd come in and we'd be quoting it all the time. Yeah, that's a big part of my humour in my childhood. That and anything that sort of Rick Mayall was doing, so Bottom as well. Equally obsessed with that. I think Blackadder Goes Forth was probably my favourite iteration. But I think 3 and 4, definitely. But 4 because it had a very poignant ending to it as well, which sort of caught you. The World War I, they go over the top at the end of it, and it's, oh, my hairs have just gone up thinking about it. It was incredibly funny and then incredibly sad, and that stuck with me. I think the first film that I watched that made me think I'd like to act, or at least I was interested in what acting could do, was we'd been studying Romeo and Juliet at school when I was like 13, and I didn't, understand a word of it, really didn't know what was going on, and I thought, how on earth can anyone ever understand Shakespeare? And then Ken Branagh brought out Much Ado About Nothing as a movie. And I remember sitting and watching it and just being mesmerised by him and Emma Thompson speaking Shakespeare, but in a way that I completely understood. And the charisma that came across from him and from her, I just was so attracted to. And I thought, it got something bubbling inside of me. And I thought I'd like to be like that one day. The first thing I ever acted in would have been when we were 11 years old, so the final year of junior school. Me and, everyone actually in that year had to be part of the school production. And the school production that year was called Carrots, and it was a musical about the Dr. Bernardo story, and Carrots was the nickname of this orphan that Dr. Bernardo took off the streets. I played the leader of the street kids called Nobby. And my twin sister Lucy actually played Dr. Bernardo with a drawn-on moustache. The first line I ever said in a professional capacity, in a TV show, so the first job I ever did, there used to be a BBC show called Kiss Me Kate, and I guested on that for one episode. Caroline Quentin's character's niece was coming to stay for the weekend, and I was playing her boyfriend who turned up unannounced, and when she announced that I was there, I popped my head around the door and went, "All right, That was my first ever line. All right. Powerful, powerful, profound bit of acting that was. My first audition. My first audition probably would have been for when I was at drama school. We were allowed in our final year of drama school to audition for professional pantomimes because that was what the college was doing, and they said if you have an opportunity to do it elsewhere, go and do it. So I auditioned for Beauty and the Beast that was at Kirkcaldy in Fife, and I actually got the job, which was amazing, alongside my dear friend James McAvoy. So I went and played the Beast and the Prince, and James played Bobby Buckfast, who was like the Buttons character, and we had a right laugh. I think I remember doing a bit of Hamlet in the audition, weirdly, and doing Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat from Guys and Dolls. And I remember being in the audition thinking this is going well because the director Jonathan was pushing me to get my voice deeper and deeper, and I was thinking, I wonder if he thinks I could be the Prince, and the Beast. So testing my vocal range to see if I could do both. The Beast voice was down here, Beauty. I haven't got the deepest voice in the world, so I was very kind of conscious that it maybe wasn't the deepest beast in the world. The first film I remember that reduced me to tears was my mum's favourite film, still is my mum's favourite film, The Railway Children. Beautiful film about a family that at the beginning of the film the dad gets taken away and they don't know why, and they get forced to go and live in the countryside. And the whole film is about them missing their dad and all of these, how they occupy their time during this time. And then at the very end of the film, I'm going to start crying. The very end of the film, Bobby, the eldest daughter, she is told to go to the train station because something's happening and she's not sure quite what. And as it's happening, you realise, hold on a minute, is the dad coming back? Is the dad coming back? And then it goes into slow motion. Oh God, I'm going to cry. Goes into slow motion. And there's all this steam on the platform, and as the steam clears, she's looking around, and then you see the figure of her dad appear, and in slow motion she goes, "Daddy, it's my daddy." Anyway, there you go, still gets me.
What's the first quote or maybe moment from a film or a TV show that really kind of stuck with you?
I think probably, I still use it today actually, so one of my top 5 films of all time, Mary Poppins. There is a sequence in Mary Poppins where they go over to Dick Van Dyke's uncle's house, or uncle or grandfather, I think it's uncle, and he is on the ceiling laughing. And because he's laughing so much, it takes you up to the ceiling, and they all start joining, and they have a tea party on the ceiling, and it's just a wonderful scene, and they sing a song called We Love to Laugh. And the only way to get them down off the ceiling is for Mary Poppins to tell them that they have to leave, and that for them is the saddest news in the world. And so I always, and I still say it now to my kids when we have to leave somewhere where we're having a good time, I say, come on, it's time to get off the ceiling. When I read the script for Lucifer the first time, the backstory to that is I was doing pilot season, and it hadn't been my first pilot season, but there was a time, it doesn't really happen anymore in the States, where every network would be doing pilots for their next year of shows, and it was a bit like a sort of festival of auditioning. There were so many things going on. Of course, most of these things don't see the light of day, but I had been sent a number of scripts, and I was obsessed with one in particular, which wasn't Lucifer. It was this Sarah Silverman pilot for HBO, and I flew all the way to New York, insistent that I had to meet Sarah, even though she said she thought I might be a bit young for it. I was like, no, I want to meet her, I want to get in the room. I went to New York, I met her, we had a great audition, and then about 5 hours later I got a call saying, it hasn't worked out, you're too young, sorry. And I was like, and I was a bit deflated, and I had to get a flight the next morning back to LA to carry on doing pilot season. And I sort of reached into my bag at JFK Airport for what was the next thing I was going to read, and I looked at it, and it was called Lucifer, and I went, oh, fucking hell, here we go. About the devil, here we go. And thankfully, I was about 3 pages in, and I'd laughed several times out loud already, and I thought, oh, there's something here, I really like this character. So it was a cynical opening of a script, but it was a very hopeful closing of it, put it that way. A divine moment indeed. It was Dad talking to me. I've got various bits of memorabilia from Lucifer. The very last day we filmed on the penthouse set, which was my favourite set, which was Lucifer's house essentially, and I couldn't really take anything big, but there was an ivory tusk, fake ivory tusk, I hasten to add, that was an ornament on the side of Lucifer's mantelpiece. And it had all these sort of intricate carvings in it, but then it also had a very unfortunate sort of end to it that made it look like something else, should we say. And we had a lot of fun behind the scenes with that from time to time, winding each other up and laughing. And I thought, I'm going to take that with me. So I've got sort of like an archaeological dildo on my on my mantelpiece at home. Oh, when I read the script for Thursday Murder Club, I was delighted that they'd even thought of me to do it. I wasn't aware, well, I was aware of the books, but I hadn't read the books. So my first sort of foray into that world was the script. And I just thought it was funny and charming and all these things. And of course I knew who was playing the parts of the main four when I was reading it, so it was very easy to kind of picture it. But it was just a great read, really easy, quintessentially English, so much going for it. And then I read the book as well and I was like, oh, this is great. I love this. First day on the set of Thursday Murder Club for me was a scene with all the main four guys, with Helen and Sir Ben and Pierce and Celia. And I was coming to see my dad, played by Pierce, at the retirement home. And the character I'm playing in the film is a bit of a minor celebrity, so everyone is meant to be really excited that my character's there. But it was really sort of ironic because it was the other way around, where I was like, oh my God, I'm in a scene with all these heroes of mine, and I was sort of geeking out on the inside while they were geeking out on the outside. But yeah, it was lovely. I mean, it was just like, I can't believe I'm doing this with these people.
Did you get a chance to talk with Pierce about your love of James Bond?
I was a bit hesitant to mention Bond to Pierce because I wasn't sure if that was a fond memory for him or if it's something that he'd like to move on from or whatever. But I remember at one point it came up that someone said to me on the side of the set, "Oh, you'd be a great James Bond." I was wearing like a suit and had sunglasses on or whatever, and he went, "Oh, you'd be a great James Bond." And then Pierce went, you would be a great James Bond." And I went, "Oh, Pierce, thank you."